Thanks very much, Ann. And volume good, everyone can hear. Um, and thanks so much, Ann, for kicking this webinar off on how to start and run your nonprofit business. And as Ann said in her introduction, the webinar is designed to provide a broad overview on what are some of the best practices for nonprofit success, whether you're thinking about starting a nonprofit or you have a nonprofit. And there may be a few things here that are good reminders that you and your team will want to think about to continue to succeed, to sustain your mission. So, just a little bit about me. I like that photo. A little younger, hair was a little darker. But I've spent my career in for-profits and nonprofits. Um, some of the for-profits, Time Warner, Scholastic, and some of the nonprofits, particularly in the kind of art and culture space, with Mystic Seaport and Save the Children, Yale Center for British Art. So I've been fortunate in having kind of both the for-profit, not-for-profit experience and SCORE. I've been with SCORE for over a decade, and SCORE is a nonprofit. And really part of our mission is we're just volunteers here to help you succeed in your small business goals. And I think a key word there is volunteer. And you'll hear me say the importance of volunteers and the success of your nonprofit business. And those of you who may already be involved with a nonprofit know how important volunteers are. Um, just as a real broad factoid, the National Center for Charitable Statistics estimates there are currently more than 1.7 million active nonprofits in the United States. So, segment of small businesses, large organizations. Many of you are probably familiar with the very large national and oftentimes international nonprofits like UNICEF or Worldwide Wildlife Federation, American Red Cross, St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. They are all nonprofits. They all have one thing in common: to support and sustain their mission with best practices. And we can learn a lot from them. The nonprofits that I work with are generally smaller nonprofits. Uh, and these nonprofits looking to sustain their mission. And we'll talk about some of the ways that I think, and in my experience, will be most helpful to you. So, starting and running your nonprofit, the areas I'll be focusing on today are what defines a nonprofit, and talking to a lot of folks who are interested. And I imagine we have a number of you on this call about starting a nonprofit. What actually defines a nonprofit? Uh, what's your mission? And I think we'll talk a lot about that, but I think it's just an underlying principle, just as a guide, your North Star. What's your mission? And you and your team share that same vision and mission, because you have to communicate that to a lot of different people and organizations and resources to hopefully support your mission. We'll talk a little bit of why is there a board of directors, and also not only in starting up a nonprofit, but those of you who are involved with existing nonprofits who should have just a strategic plan. These don't really have to be complicated at all. The main thinking here is everybody on the same page? Do we all share the same vision, same mission? And what are really some of the really key priorities we need to be all in sync on to really sustain our mission? One of the things we'll talk about is because nonprofits are small businesses, and businesses have successful businesses have good financial management. So hopefully on your team, whether starting up or running a nonprofit, you've got someone on your team that's good with the numbers. And we'll talk even more again about the role of volunteers. They really are part of the secret sauce to any success for a nonprofit. I think you might have heard Ann mention there are about 10,000 SCORE volunteers nationwide. So the good news about SCORE is there are a lot of people that can give you some free advice to help you reach your goals. Nonprofits, events, often fundraising events. And I'll talk a little bit about some things I think are important when you are thinking about event planning. And oftentimes, again, these are for fundraising purposes, kind of a key source of funding to support your nonprofit. Some of the takeaways today, I think this is an important one because there seems to be some confusion. Um, a nonprofit is a tax status. It's not a financial goal. Without financial self-sufficiency, your nonprofit organization can't control your direction and concentrate on fulfilling and sustaining your mission. So I think the takeaway here is that running your nonprofit like a business, a successful business, I think is a guiding principle that everybody wants to embrace. So what's a nonprofit? What defines a nonprofit? Well, first and foremost, it is a business. It's granted a tax exempt status by the IRS. Tax exempt status. And donations to nonprofits are often tax deductible. So that's something you and your organization will have set up not only to seek donations and funds, but be set up because you not only have to account for those, but you also have to acknowledge those and acknowledge to donors, thank you for your financial support for our organization. Here's a document that documents that so they have that for their tax records so they can account for that as a nonprofit contribution and tax deduction. So at the end of the year, your nonprofit, at the end of the fiscal year, when all your bills are paid for, because it does cost money to run your nonprofit, any profit that's left over goes back into your organization to further its mission. Now, your nonprofit can pay people in your organization to do certain things, but obviously you have to get enough funding to cover those operating costs. And this goes back to volunteers. Unpaid volunteers are great resources that many small nonprofits really rely on. People who bring skills, that they have, it might be in finance or fundraising or marketing or, social media marketing, operation, these kinds of skills that people who support your mission, support your organization say, yes, I'd like to come and bring some of my skills and help you succeed. But you can pay people to do very kind of important tasks uh, for your nonprofit. But I think most would agree if we can really keep our operating costs as low as possible, we're going to maximize, whatever end of year profitability that we need to sustain our organization. Now, these end of year profits, they're not distributed to officers or boards of directors. They go back in to, sustaining your operation. And you'll hear this, and it's probably one good thing to write down for those who might be new to the idea of starting a nonprofit. Nonprofits generally, and the ones that I have worked with mostly, are identified by the IRS as a 501c3 organization. They fall into the general categories of religious, charities, arts, culture, education, pretty broad spectrum of nonprofits. But when you do a little bit of research, and I would encourage that, just Google what are the different nonprofit IRS categories. Just Google that in AI, chat, GBT, Google, they'll help you out. Okay. Now, for those of you who are thinking about starting up a nonprofit, believe it or not, the IRS has actually made it easier than it used to be. Right now, there is a IRS nonprofit tax form. It's the 1023EZ form. It's only about 3 pages long. It used to be applying for nonprofit tax stat. It was like a 26-page form. It was really quite a challenge. And you'll get this when you look up, receive the, or go online to get this webinar. But just IRS 1023EZ nonprofit. You can get this link many ways. This is the formal link to that. And most small organizations, certainly the ones that I work with at SCORE, in fact, about 70% of all applicants for a IRS nonprofit 501c3 tax status, they qualify to use this form. Another, I think, sort of guideline, most organizations with gross receipts, by receipts, funding, funds, monies you're taking in of 50,000 or less, or with assets of $250,000 or less. An asset might be your organization owns the building that you operate out of, or you might have something specific to your nonprofit that you own that is considered an asset. This form is filed online, and I believe the current user fee is about $275. That is paid online at the time of the application. It's filed through pay.gov. And the approval takes about 2 to 4 weeks. Now, I think one of the good things about this, other than it's a shorter form, it's not a huge amount to pay, but that's part of your operating costs. So, factor that in to your, financial business plan. Oh, I've got a $275 fee before I've maybe taken in $1 of funding support. But what's good about this form is it's got a good checklist, which will help you really, is what I'm envisioning and what the IRS would identify as a nonprofit. It's got a good checklist, so go check it out. So getting started with your vision, your inspiration, your passion, and all those I think are really important because that's something that you share with others for your nonprofit um, idea. Um, One thing that I like to really encourage, and I think it really does kind of fall under best practices 101, but a goal, your goal for a nonprofit without a plan, I mean, some kind of a plan that you can share with other key people on your team. A goal without a plan is just a dream. So we start with the dream, but then we start taking that and let's put that into a plan. You wouldn't take a trip, a vacation without some kind of a plan. Where are you going and what are you going to do? What do you want to be sure to see and how are you going to get there? All that. So a plan is, I think, pretty fundamental in most things we do, but certainly I think it is something that anyone starting up a small business, which a nonprofit is, would agree. We need to have a plan. Just starting with your plan. A business plan really is a requisite for any small business. And I'll give you a couple of things that'll help you just get started in thinking about a plan. And then you can improve and refine and add this into really more of a kind of formal business plan. But I think number one is, what's your mission? Agreed upon statement by you, if you're the leader of this nonprofit organization, that explains the reason for your existence. What is your mission? A mission statement, could be 3 or 4 lines. Short is good. Something that you will be uh, communicating, sharing, copying, and pasting into websites, into appeal letters, into. So, what's your mission? I think it's really important as you're thinking about what is our mission, thinking about why would someone support your cause, your mission, your nonprofit. Now, you may be very passionate, very knowledgeable, a very strong um, inspiration for this mission. Important to have. Do some research. Are there other similar organizations out there? Is this mission being fulfilled? Whatever your mission is, it's very important to start thinking about why would someone support your mission, because that's going to be fundamental to any success you have in marketing and fundraising. You're going to really have a good sense of who are the people that most likely would support my nonprofit. I think the other thing that's really helpful is just kind of identifying, if you're in startup phase, what are the key things you need to do, to get started? If you are in operational stage, what are the programs that your organization is going to undertake either to start up or support, sustain your mission? What exactly is your nonprofit going to deliver, in programs or services? What is that? Okay. And um, we'll look at a kind of a nonprofit startup worksheet in a few minutes that I think will kind of help you just to begin to organize, because I think this is a good first step towards a business plan, but it's also a really manageable, easy, I think, way to share with you and other people that are going to be on your team. Again, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. This is what's really important. These are the programs we're going to try to do in 2026. And just some of those real basics and keeping it simple to keep everybody engaged. Because, by the way, they are volunteers. One of the things that I was working with someone recently um, for just a simple plan for their marketing. It was in 2025. And I'm a big fan of, really take a horizontal piece of paper, divide it into four quarters, and bullet point under each quarter. Well, what's kind of the key things that we're doing? If this is an event plan, you know, let's just kind of bullet point those in. This event plan and marketing, usually they live together in your nonprofit because your marketing is promoting events or programs or whatever it is you're doing. So the marketing person, the event person, the program manager, they're all really working together. And it's really good, I think, to have a go-to, easy to update and look at to see, well, where are we on the plan? If this is events, what are we doing each month? Uh, if we have goals for each of these events in terms of number of people we need to attend or how much money we want to raise, we can just keep this really simple. Each of these will have its own plan, that'll really deep dive into, who, what, when, where, why. But I think just at a glance, keep it simple. And this is kind of a good way to look at it. Now, those of you who are on the call that are involved in an existing nonprofit, this will look, I think, pretty familiar to you in how you are organized, how you're structured, how you're set up. Um, for a nonprofit startup, if you kind of look at that upward pointing arrow and thinking about your board, this is a key team. This is really what a nonprofit generally has in place. It has a board president. Uh, on the board, key roles are a treasurer, the finance, the numbers, you know, does the budget for the year, keeps track of funds coming in, donations, operating costs, you know. Also, it's good to have a secretary on your board, someone who's keeping track of records, organizing your monthly board meetings. You can do them in person, do them on Zoom, keeping track of key documents, your bylaws, really someone who organizes, keep track of really key information. I think it's also good to have on your board someone that comes from a marketing background, someone who may be working full time and who did the introduction, has her own small marketing agency. She is an expert in digital marketing. And we are so fortunate to have Anne as part of our SCORE chapter. And she's also our chair. And she's done a lot to work with our SCORE mentors on what are current best practices in digital marketing and AI and chat GBT, all those tools that everyone is using now. Have somebody on your team, that board with a marketing background really helps. I also think it's good to have someone on your team that's good in just general operations. They've got programs you're doing. Programs require people and places and times of day. And, we have events. We need volunteers to help us do these things. So, just kind of as a bare bones team. And boards can be bigger, but I think I look at this as being kind of manageable. But also what I highlighted in yellow here, those, and if you look at the 501c3, that IRS application form, kind of what's the prerequisites, and different states may be different. In Connecticut, having a board president, a treasurer, a secretary, kind of, yeah, you have to have at the least those three positions. Now, as your operation grows, you can have a operating team that has an executive director. There may be some executive directors on this call, and the executive director can have a team. Some of these people can be paid, some might be volunteers. If your organization can afford it, great. You can pay for a marketing person, someone to oversee volunteers, someone that's got really good fundraising experience, someone who's a program manager. As our SCORE chapter has grown and evolved over the years, we really have a lot of key people in our chapter. They're not paid, they are volunteers who really do all of these things really well. We also have people, we have a chair, our Anne, she's our chair, but we have kind of an executive team that kind of guides everything. Okay. All right. How do you select people for your board? Well, the board president really has to be good at defining and communicating the roles and goals for each of those people we just looked at. So it's good for each one of these kind of position to have a 1 or 2 line job description, because if you're going to ask somebody to volunteer, they're going to want to say, well, Bob, what is it you want me to do as a treasurer? Okay. So I think that's important. That little short job description, helps you and that volunteer to be aligned, to be in sync. Uh, and I think having that for each of your key people will help everyone. And by the way, startup teams to get this nonprofit up and running, these kind of skills that I've been talking about will really be helpful to you. But as you evolve, people come and go. And so again, skill sets or needs may change as your nonprofit advances. Um, I think board members should all make an annual financial contribution to your nonprofit. And because all of you are fundraisers, and I know a lot of people say, no, that's not what I want to do, Bob. Oh, no, no, no. No, you are passionate about the mission of your operation. You know people who you think might also want to support. And I know each of you who are in current nonprofits probably enjoy talking to other people about, hey, here's what we do. And you can be really instrumental in helping create some important support relationships with people. And you haven't asked anyone for a penny. You're just out there, making friends, increasing awareness. Now, I think best practice, board meetings should be short, to the point. They need to have agendas. Less is more. And those agendas need to be sent out in advance of a board meeting, whether you're doing it in person or doing a Zoom board meeting or any kind of meeting. These are volunteers. They have busy lives just like you. Everybody should be prepared to sit down. Here's what we're going to talk about today. These are important things that each of you that are, at this board meeting are really key to helping us do. What does a board do? Well, they're basically overseeing and leading the organization. That's why I like whenever people on your board that really have some skill sets that they can kind of bring to helping guide and lead this organization. They're not compensated, and they should meet regularly. Once a month is good. They're there to discuss, key topics. If it's a startup, that startup team really has a roadmap. We saw that little worksheet. Hey, this is what we've got to do. We all agreed, what we need to get done. But they're also there perhaps to vote on key affairs for your organization. Um, at a minimum, there should be an annual meeting with all board members present and also volunteers, supporters, bring them all together for an annual meeting. These are not permanent lifetime positions. I'm a kind of a firm believer that, 2 to 5 years, there's turnover. People's lives change. They're volunteers. Uh, so I think again, when you're bringing someone onto your team, on your board, and they say, "But Bob, how many years am I committing to?" If it's a startup, it's like, "Hey, could you help us over the next year get this up and running? I think you'd be great as a treasurer, or you could help us develop some programs. Or, gee, you got great marketing. We're going to get to a website shortly. Really be great if you could help us kind of oversee that." Okay. Um, volunteers, again, uh, volunteers are 3 times more likely than non-volunteers to contribute money to your organization. So that's not only kind of an important thing to remember that we need volunteers to, succeed as a nonprofit, but also I think your volunteers really are there to financially support. And I think that's important to encourage that. And as you build up, and we'll talk about this, that database of supporters, there's a lot of buy off the shelf programs to keep track of fundraising and all of that. But it's a simple way is to start out with an Excel spreadsheet and just segment, your supporters. Your board is one group, your volunteers are a group, companies or sponsors, they're a group, and then individual contributors. All right, we'll talk about that, but just keep in mind volunteers and having them in your database so you can easily reach out to them with email blasts or links to your website or whatever it might be. So you can easily reach them and communicate with them about what you're doing. But I think most importantly, whenever possible, to thank them for their support. Um, managing volunteers is really a priority for this, I think, the success and those on the call and existing nonprofits. I think you would agree with me. And in my experience, it's great to have somebody on your team that kind of is, yeah, I'll kind of be the coach. I'll kind of manage. I'll keep track of our volunteers. Yeah, I'll see if we're keeping our database updated with their names and email addresses, you know. Um, so having someone in your organization to manage volunteers, I think will really help. We do onboarding at our SCORE organization. We have one person who is in charge of people. I'd like to volunteer for SCORE. I'd like to become a SCORE mentor. So we have an onboarding person that meets with them, tells them about SCORE, you know, has a kind of onboarding or training session. Well, here's what we do at SCORE. Uh, so I think having someone who does that really will be helpful to your organization. The other reason why volunteers and those of us who live in small New England communities, uh, understand that small towns are small towns, and having volunteers that are active in your organizations, they're really ambassadors of goodwill in your community for your nonprofit. So volunteers, number one, I think we would agree, make sure they're happy. Do everything we can to help our volunteers be successful, be productive. If there are new people coming into our organization, have we really kind of given them a good orientation? Are they well grounded? Do they really have an understanding of what their role might be? We're there to help them be productive, especially at any, event that we've planned. Everybody's got a role in an event. Boy, do they have the tools? Do they know what they're doing? Are we helping them to be productive and successful? Most important, appreciated. We can't thank our volunteers enough. Now, one of the things that I think any of you on the call, I think most of you would agree, well, how do we know if we're being successful? We set plans, we have a mission, we've got a group of people that are all on the same page, we're all aligned, you know. Measure what matters. Unless you can measure it, how do you know if you've succeeded? Success metrics. I think it's good to kind of have that sort of baked into our operation. And let me give you an example here of success metrics. One example would be a fundraising event. And I think most of us have attended some kind of a fundraising event over the years. Might have been a 5K run. It might have been a bake sale. It might have been a music event. These are fundraisers for organizations to raise funds to support, sustain their missions. So organizing a fundraising event, the plan that you've put together, that your team is using, sort of as their guide, their roadmap. A success metric for a fundraising event would be, how much money do you want to raise from this program or event? How much money? That's a quantifiable success metric. And that's a good number to have on your plan. How much is it going to cost us to run this event? Do we have to rent a tent? Do we have to get some tables and chairs? Do we have to get a microphone and a speaker? If you are going to do an event, which is a great opportunity to tell people all about what you're doing, thank your sponsors, thank people for coming, please, audio, audio, audio. You can rent your microphones and speakers, or they have that perhaps at the venue, but using that opportunity, that might be an operating cost, Maybe you're printing up t-shirts or mugs or something. These are all operating costs. So what's it going to cost me to run an event? Oh, how many people do we think we need to attend this event, pay for this event? If just, what is that success metric? Now, if this is a first time event, you don't know. It's like we would like to hopefully get 50 people to this or 100 people. Put a number down. If you ran the event last year and you decided that was successful, whatever success metrics you're using, you've got a good, accurate record. That's your benchmark. And those are the numbers you can kind of plug into your 2026 plan for whatever that might be. But then you got to reconcile, well, how many people actually attended? Someone's keeping track of that when you're doing events or programs, whatever they might be, that your organization, does. So I think these are, again, keeping track of this will really be your benchmarks, be your guide. This is something that we'll have as we do events. How many sponsors did we get for that event? Your goal is to keep your operating costs to a minimum. If you can get a sponsor, we have sponsors for many of our SCORE events. In fact, we have one person in our chapter who is unbelievably good at getting sponsors to support our SCORE chapter events. And many of those sponsors support these kinds of webinars. that really helps. And the opportunity to thank these sponsors at events is really one of the key things someone wants to keep track of. So what do we do? Well, we got a planning team to do an event. And if it's the first time, uh, that's going to be very important because you do want to succeed. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of people to do it successfully. And but if you've run an event, you're going to have a post-mortem not too long afterwards because it's a great way to thank everybody. Go over, so how did we do? We had a list of our success metrics. How'd we do? And gee, are we going to do this again next year? Did we agree this is successful? I think a goal is if this is a successful event, for whatever reason you're doing it, or a successful program, okay, then if this is successful, put it on the planning sheet for 2026. We're going to do it again. And the next time, we don't have to start from scratch. We really know what defines success. Marketing your organization today, you have so many tools, websites, Facebook, social media. You need all of these. And hopefully you have someone on your team that's very familiar with these. Um, it's important for you because doing e-blasts can be a great way to get the word out. I think a lot of you received e-blasts for this SCORE nonprofit webinar. And again, as I mentioned, you can buy off the shelf pretty sophisticated fundraising nonprofit tools. Um, you can also start low cost. Someone that's good with an Excel spreadsheet loves to do Excel and segmentation and segmenting my donor list, segmenting on that list who are our sponsors and who are the companies and who are, all because all of these groups, in the aggregate support your mission. But when we go out to communicate to these groups, it's not always a one size fits all. Example, I'm sending out a fundraising request. Maybe it's an e-blast, someone who donated last year is a little bit different than somebody that has never donated. And, 75% of your ask, your donor support fundraising letter will be the same. But that intro may be tailored slightly to, dear, uh, dear, let's see, I'm coming up with a very quick program. Um, dear healthcare, dear healthcare for veterans supporters. Let's say that's your healthcare for veterans. First, I want to thank you for your great support last year. With your financial support, we've been able to continue to reach our goal and sustain our mission to mission. This year, that becomes boilerplate. Okay. One of the things I think you want to do, and it's very important, is you cultivate that kind of core group. They're influential people in your community. They're people that maybe the president at the local bank. Maybe they're people that specifically are in sort of positions of influence or kind of public or community involvement that are really important to your mission, kind of segmenting them on the list, segmenting them in a way that, when you reach out to them, you know, it's just not the one size fits all. And I think part of what you're doing, and this, those who have existing nonprofits, you have some key people, key organizations that really are kind of at that top of that pyramid of these are really important people we constantly want to keep in touch with. Their sponsors, we want to have their logos on our landing page. So we're kind of thinking about those people all the time. One of our key opportunities is whenever possible to thank and acknowledge all of our supporters. Now, if you have some fundraising expertise on your marketing team, on your board, on your startup team, that's great. Because nonprofits exist by contributions, by support, by tax exempt contributions to your organization. So anyone that's kind of done any fundraising is a good person to have on your team, and kind of building a fundraising team will really be helpful. I think just as we mentioned earlier, and I showed you, um, most effective, successful, existing nonprofits are working on their 2026 plan right now. They're looking at what they've done this past year, and they are taking that and kind of cut, paste 2026 plan. Maybe there's a few things that, no, I don't think we're going to do that again. Or this gets the yellow highlighter. We really need to improve our marketing. Okay. So, um, or we want to do 3 special events this year because last year we did this event. That's great. Let's put that back on the plan for 2026. We've got some people that have been talking about another kind of event that they've attended in some other organizations that seems to be successful. Maybe we want to test that this year. Uh, so getting that onto the plan sooner rather than later. But all organizations are really kind of, yeah, we have kind of our rough plan together, and our team is meeting and everybody is in agreement. If you're a startup right now for 2026, you want to have kind of your one page, here's the plan. Here are the key things we want to do for over the 4 quarters. And first quarter 2026 is maybe you're really kind of startup. We agree. These are the things we need to have in place to kind of get this started up. Or you may already have some of those in place. And first quarter 2026 is going to be, hey, looks like we're doing really pretty good with our program plan. We've got an idea for a fundraising event. I think we can kind of put together a basic website. And there's some great, easy tools to do that. Wix, W-I-X would be one I'd recommend. But if we're going to do programs, events in 2026, especially events, you really need to give yourself a lot of lead time. If you're planning something in fall of 2026, your harvest festival, and if you've never done that, start putting that plan together sooner than later. And I think those of you who do plan programs each year know they do take a lot of lead time to get them set up. You want to keep an accurate record of all your programs. I've worked with small nonprofits that were very good at putting a program together, delivering the program, getting a lot of attendance, being a successful delivery of the program. No one kept track of how many attended. What were some challenges we want to overcome next time? How do we improve this? No one's keeping track. If it's money coming in, if we raise some money, someone needed to keep track of that because we have to report on that. We have to keep track of that. So just delivering a program, but all the other things that are critical. I think the one thing is those of you who are putting together your nonprofit plan, and those of you in existing nonprofits, I think would agree, the criteria for everything we do. If we do this well, will it help sustain keyword, my organization? Will this sustain, as you define, what will sustain my organization. Because if we sustain our organization, then we are sustaining our mission. Fundraising, I think most of you would agree. People give from their heart. Oh, let me stop for a minute. I'm sorry, I was going to give a little pause there.
Yeah, I
Uh,
didn't know if you wanted to. We've got
yeah,
more
yeah,
questions.
yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no, good, good. Always good to uh, have Professor Potter here. Take a breath.
All right, we've got a couple of questions. Number one, we've got Leslie had asked, can the founder be on the board as well as be the executive director? That was a couple of slides back.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes if this is a startup, Leslie, sometimes you're kind of wearing both hats. But I think you evolved into, and again, however this is made up, your nonprofit, you know, if you're the president of the board and you have people on that board with defined roles that I outlined in that chart, um, I think wearing those two hats, you can, but I'm not sure that is always the best. Um, and you're depending on what your organization is. If there is an executive director, the exec director reports to the board president. What's another question?
We've got a couple of questions. Shayna had just asked, you mentioned something about the fiscal year and planning for the fiscal year. And the question is somewhat related. It said, what do you have to do if you need to change your fiscal year from a calendar year, but they want to
Uh,
restructure it closer to the school year?
yeah,
That's
and our fiscal year, and our fiscal year at SCORE is
right. October,
October to October. Is that correct?
correct. Yep.
Yeah,
October to the end of September. Yep.
October. Yeah, October. So our fiscal year for 2026 starts October 1 and it ends September 30th, 2026. So it's October 1, 2025. It ends September 30th, 2026. So yeah, you can, change your fiscal year to what relates to your organization. Yep,
Okay, and we have two other questions that actually Leslie asked about volunteers and whether board members should occasionally participate with volunteers to understand the day-to-day operations.
absolutely.
That right? Okay,
Absolutely.
easy answer.
And because if we think about it now, again, having a board member who's got some fundraising skills and maybe to start up, say, hey, I'll put together a little fundraising team. And by the way, it's not fun to do any of this by yourself. It's so nice having Ann here today to double team on this. So yeah, a board member kind of working with, whatever that operation might be, sure. Good
Okay,
thing.
and then the last one was and then we'll let you go on. The last one was from Cheryl, and this may be something you want to save to the end. It might be a longer response, but she wanted to know why nonprofits are generally guided by Robert's rules of order, but they never provide training. I suppose that has to do, it really depends on the nonprofit if they train on it or not. But I don't know if you have any comments on that.
I'll have to think about that.
Okay.
Robert Potter's rule of order may,
Okay.
may not be the best. I'd have to go back and look at that. I think you can almost answer that question yourself because Robert's rules of orders, there are some, good practices in running a meeting and raise your hand and do we have a second? And all. Yes, those things are probably good. But and deciding that's how we're going to run our meetings or vote, things of that nature. I think I'd have to go back and study Robert's Rules of Order a little bit, but we can come back to that. Thanks,
Okay,
though.
great. So you can go on. Thank you
All
for
right, sure
fielding those,
thing.
Bob.
Okay, so fundraising, you give from your heart. If you really don't, I think, emotionally connect to healthcare programs for veterans or underserved children in New London or whatever this, or art therapy for underserved, or whatever your mission is, you know, obviously you're passionate about it. To get other people to support it, I think we would agree they're kind of really responding to from the heart. And that's where everybody's a fundraiser. Let me tell you about SCORE. Let me tell you how SCORE could be helpful to, your small business. People give to successful organizations. How do we define success? Well, number one, in how you communicate with other people within your organization and outside of your organization, professionally, respectfully. How is your website organization? Do you look like a professional organization? If I were to land on your homepage, when we do a program, did we do our best to be professional? Did we conduct ourselves? Did we organize it? Did we acknowledge our donors? Did we thank? Did we have a good sound system so they could hear what we were saying? Do we run it, successfully? Uh, and also, can we share with people, with your support last year, we were able to raise $10,000 to help whatever that mission might be. What defines success? And when you can share that, wow, that's a great thing to put on your homepage. That's a great thing to communicate. And when you go out to fundraise or get sponsors, hey, you sound like a successful organization. I want to help you. Businesses give to organizations that benefit their business. Well, do your homework. Why would this bank support my nonprofit? Well, I did some research to see if this bank actually supports veterans programs, healthcare programs, community fixed bicycles for kids programs, whatever it might be. Go look at their website, go look at their press releases, because that's going to be part of your pitch. I saw last year that you were supporting after school programs for kids that are underserved in my community. I want to tell you about something that my organization is doing, because that's where they're at. Successful nonprofits have people assigned to fundraising. Thanking and acknowledging all donors is a key priority. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, where are the fundraising sort of sources? Where can we look to getting funding support for my nonprofit? Well, number one is individual donors. And, as a starting point, developing relationships with these folks. Everybody knows somebody. And I think when you and your team get together, one of your team assignments would be, hey, Ann, do you know 5 people that you think would support this after school program for underserved teenage women? Yeah, I think I know maybe 5 people. Good. Let's just start there. Everybody knows somebody. It's so much easier to go out and do fundraising when you can say, Bob Potter thought you might be a good person to talk to. I want to tell you about this program because he told me you're working with, underserved middle school students in my community. Okay. So it's also great. Seek out some high profile people in your community. Everybody knows somebody. Start building that list. Gee, I think this person who is the president of the Chamber of Commerce in my town would be a good person to reach out to. And you know what? Sometimes you can put together a little advisory committee. No, I don't want to be on the board. I'm very busy. I have a full-time job. Hey, would you kind of just from time to time be an advisory person, because the small businesses in my area and you might have some good recommendations for us? Sure. Would you mind if we put you on our advisory committee and your picture and 3 lines on the webpage that says advisory committee team? Rather, committee is a terrible word, never use it. advisory team. Oh, yeah, sure. That promotes them. That promotes the Chamber of Commerce. What's good for them can be good for you. Always try to be thinking about, well, what's in it for them? How does this help their organization? Sponsor events to reduce your costs, increase awareness. You're marketing your event. The XYZ bank is marketing your event. 1 + 1 now equals 3. You've got more people out there promoting because they have common cause. Helping small businesses in my community is good for my bank. That's what we do. Helping small businesses in our community is good for SCORE. That's what we do. We're both in the same business. We both are out there kind of promoting, supporting small businesses. Sale products. Your total income cannot come from this source alone. So if your total income for your nonprofit is coffee mugs with your slogan, your name, your brand, whatever it is, if that has been the sole income for your nonprofit and you have no other sources, you can't show any other source, the IRS may say, I don't think you're a nonprofit. I think you're in the coffee mug selling business. Keep accurate records. Someone on your team, the treasurer, really keeping accurate records. Partner for success. Partner, partner, partner. I think that's another key word you've heard me say today. What's the plan? Does the plan sustain my mission? What's a key to success? Partnering with other people, partnering with organizations, businesses that could be a sponsor for a special program or event. You're piggybacking on their emails, on their website. They're promoting you. You've got their logos that link to their business on your website. You're going to reach a wider audience. You're going to increase awareness for your organization, kind of the marketing 101. Increase awareness. It'll lower the cost for running your organization, for your programs, for your resources. Also, those of you going out to get grants from organizations that give grants to nonprofits, one of the things they want to see, be convinced of, that your organization is partnering with other organizations. If you're a go it alone, even if they really support your mission, they have reservations about your operational sustainability and success unless you're partnering with other organizations to succeed. Hey, that was a good lead into that next bullet, wasn't it? Grant-making organizations really like community partnerships. Showing the logo, sponsors, promote them. How will that organization benefit from supporting you? That's your marketing 101. That's your fundraising 101. Gee, let me do my homework and research before I go out, and hopefully Bob provided, someone in my organization, Ann, Mary, Bill. Hey, the president there at the bank, uh, I'm going to, maybe the two of us could go make a call on the president because him. Or I could send out an email and say, hey, Bill, Mary thought you'd be a great person to talk to. Could we set up time for me to stop by for a few minutes, etc. Don't limit your success with your own two hands. I think that's kind of a guiding principle. It's a lot more fun to do this stuff with somebody else. And the other thing that I have learned, that you may be passionate, you may be enormously effective because you can do marketing, you can do fundraising, you can do program development, you can do team building, you can be the board president. And other people say, great, let Bob do it. It's good that you're good in a lot of these things. Your goal is to, hey, let's get it delegated to people as a team so they can kind of update at our monthly meeting. Hey, how are we doing on marketing, Bill? Hey, Mary, that fundraising program you were talking about, where are we? If you are so good and you then resort to, well, it's easier for me to do it myself, that's not a long-term recipe for success. Crowdfunding is something that is being used more and more. A lot of information on that. These are campaigns. Average successful campaign uses statistics, data points may have changed, but around 7,000 you're trying to raise. The campaign may last for about 9 weeks. A campaign. A fundraising campaign has a start, middle, and end. If your fundraising campaign, let's say I launched it, however, on my Facebook, or I did a crowdfunding page or whatever, if about 30% of that goal, oh, I hope to raise $7,000, is raised within the first week, you're more likely to succeed. And again, this is a great way to kind of benchmark. So how much did we raise in the first week, the first, 3 weeks, if we've got kind of a 9 week campaign? Um, Social media is critical, and it's becoming so sophisticated, an area that Anne is an expert in. And I often tell people, once you have your marketing plan sort of outlined and you have identified website, Facebook, Instagram, whatever your social media channels might be, then that's when I'd love to connect you with Anne, who could give some advice to you on best practices once you have the plan. Generally, it's not a good idea because Anne's busy, runs her own marketing agency, not to start with a blank piece of paper. You know, start with a little bit of your marketing plan. But with Facebook friends, and Anne's an expert here, from 10 to 100 to 1,000, the probability of success increases, drastically, from 9 to 20 to 40%. I think we could probably kind of assume, yep, more friends, more opportunity to succeed. But again, before we go down any of those social media roads, and I think your website is really kind of a critical must have, and Wix, WIX, is a really easy way to build your own website. Having that, and then, well, how are we going to get people to my website? Is it search optimized and all that? So much information is out there to help you do that. But in crowdfunding, this kind of demographic, maybe a younger demographic, seems to be more likely to participate. An older demographic may be less likely to participate in a crowdfunding way, may be more likely in maybe it's an e-blast, maybe it's one-on-one, maybe old school, personal letter. You know, there's a lot of different ways to reach people tailored to who they are and what we think works the best. And sometimes a cup of coffee is a great way to start that conversation with an individual you're cultivating a relationship to support your organization. How nonprofits succeed, they have a plan. It's their roadmap. And everybody on your team has the same roadmap. They're singing out of the same hymnal. Good financial management, having somebody that has those skills will really be helpful to you. Excellent delivery of services. I think kind of excellence, is really a guiding principle. And as we talked about for events, but I think it would be true for a program. If you're a cultural organization that provides a program, each month, the delivery of the program, how it's organized, who conducts it, how we deliver that program, how we communicate to people, how we provide them with the information. If it's a service that we are providing, if it's a health-oriented educational service, you know, it's really, we're delivering what we hope is an excellent, and we have defined excellent. we have defined this is what we believe is excellent for the program or service that we are providing. And that's kind of how we'll do our best to try to operate. Got a strong board. Everybody's got kind of a defined role and goal. You know, if you're a treasurer, what do you want me to do as a treasurer? What do you want me to do if I'm keeping track of information as a secretary? What do you want me to do if you want me to help kind of, you know, be on top of our volunteers or our programs, our operations? Also, I think it reflects an organization that the president of the board runs an effective meeting. They've sent out the agendas in advance, and they really have a clear idea in their head. What's the desired outcome of this meeting? You running that meeting should always have a pretty good idea if this is a successful meeting, as I hope this webinar is, you know, that these kind of key principles, yep, that's what people are taking away. That I believe would be helpful to them. Good marketing, really important. You know, social media is key, and it's a cost-effective way to do this. The expensive way to do marketing is print things and distribute printed things. Uh, you know, the cost-effective way is to use email marketing, to use your website, to use social media marketing. So getting the awareness, the word, getting it out, getting people to support you. And one thing I tell people about websites before you kind of set yourself up, pick one or two organizations that you really admire that are kind of in your segment, be it healthcare, or be it education, or be it the arts, or whatever it might be. Pick two or three and say, yes, I really like what they do, and study how they do it on their website. Do not reinvent the wheel. The internet was invented about a quarter century ago. Websites have been around. We're all trained to go to a website if we get there and they function in a certain way. And so getting creative is not what we're trying to do. Being very user effective is the goal. Volunteers, recruit volunteers, set up teams. That's a fun way to do it. And we really, I don't think, can succeed without volunteers. Anne would know the number of volunteers in our chapter uh, uh, better than I do currently. But the good news is we all enjoy getting together, and we all, you know, are mentors. We all do what Anne and I do. Um, the nonprofit worksheet. This is something that people say, all right, I don't think I'm quite ready for the business plan, but I can certainly do this. What's the name and mission of my nonprofit? Do I have a business plan? Nope, not yet. Okay, get to it. Who's my target audience? What's our nonprofit? Who are the key people if we're going to support veterans? You know, if we're going to support emerging artists, if we're going to support um, homeless people, whatever our target audience is, who are they? Why do they need you? Are there already organizations that are doing what you can do? Maybe you could partner with them and deliver something that you think you could better than them. Uh, who are the key people you need to start up and run your organization? And how much money do you need in year one or annually to sustain your mission? And when I was talking to people doing their 2025 plan, here I should just change that to 2026. If you were sitting with me to say, okay, Bob, I want to start up a nonprofit, or if we got together and say, Bob, I have a current nonprofit, I usually like to start with what are three things that you think would help you start it up, or what are three things that are keeping you up at night that you just don't feel like you're making progress in? Okay, lots of nonprofit organizations. In the time we have left, let's do Q&A.